Well, the House is clearing at the end of Prime Minister's questions. Lots to discuss. Let's bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby. I mean, first of all, Beth, there's the to and fro between her and Keir Starmer, but also, quite crucially, what appears to be a divergence of policy between her and her Chancellor.
So it started off as the main story of this PMQs being the exchanges between Starmer and her, the leader of the opposition, with this kind of mix of mockery and contempt for the Prime Minister, who, for her part, said, "I am a fighter," actually borrowing Peter Mandelson's line there. But she was really in fighting form there, trying to put in a good performance. But the bombshell in that chamber was her response to a question on uplifting or maintaining the pensions triple lot. This is when pensions rise in line with inflation, if that's the highest of three areas where you might lift it by. But essentially, it's like, will you lift pensions? Will you uprate them with inflation? Now, Jeremy Hunt clearly said on Monday that he would not commit to this policy. He said, "I'm not making any specific commitments on spending until October the 31st. He explicitly ruled it out in an interview with me where I explicitly asked. He explicitly ruled it out in the Commons. The Prime Minister has stood up there and has overruled her Chancellor. She has said in the Commons that it was a manifesto commitment. It was a pledge she made when she was trying to be leader. And she has said clearly there on the floor of the Commons, I am committed to uprating with inflation pensions. Now, there's a couple of things going on there. One, she's facing a backbench rebellion on this issue. A number of MPs have already come out publicly saying this was a manifesto commitment, it was a promise you made when you were leader, you cannot undo it. So she knew she had a political battle. But the issue is that she brought Jeremy Hunt in order to steady the ship, calm the markets. He took control of tax and spend decisions quite clearly on Monday, and the Prime Minister there at the dispatch box has publicly overruled him. Now, I've got so many questions on that. Does he agree with her? If he doesn't, how will he react? Will this unnerve the markets that the Prime Minister is again making policy on the hoof that she might have to U-turn on? She's done another U-turn on a U-turn. And so the reason that this is politically really interesting is that she needs Jeremy Hunt in order to have any credibility at all of staying in number 10. And she has just publicly overruled him in the Commons. And I'm very interested to see how Jeremy Hunt and the Treasury react to that. Now, maybe he was fine with that, but that was not what he said 48 hours ago. And hasn't the story of this government in terms of the market turmoil and the voter dissatisfaction being about saying one thing, doing another, saying one thing, doing another? And the Prime Minister has just done that again when Jeremy Hunt said, I'm making no specific tax and spend commitments until the fiscal statement on October the 31st. She just blew that up.
Well, indeed, and that contradicted something she'd said about no more spending cuts last week, which, again, he absolutely ruled out 3 days later on the Friday.
And so if you are... That's exactly right, Jane. So if you're a Conservative MP, you have a Prime Minister that says things at the dispatch box. Is there any credibility at all in what she says? Why is she undermining what was set up in order to be an attempt to stabilise things? And I think that there's a question for me, certainly, like, was that an agreed decision? James Cleverly, her Foreign Secretary, was on Sky News this morning refusing to commit to that policy. And that's another element of this, Jane. If you're a Prime Minister and you're very embattled, as she clearly is, you need your cabinet to back you, because if one of them decides that they're going to stand down, that's when it could trigger the flood of resignations. And that's what happened, you'll remember, with Boris Johnson. Sajid Javid went, Rishi Sunak went, and that was the tipping point, and the herd moved. And then he was gone by Thursday morning that week, OK? So the question I've got is, James Cleverly has just been contradicted hours later by the Prime Minister. Jeremy Hunt has just been contradicted by the Prime Minister. Did she get an agreement, or is she just trying to overrule her Chancellor? And if she is, what's the backlash going to be? I don't know the answers, it's just happened, but my analysis would be that that could be a real hot potato for her. Let's see what... I'm very interested to see how Jeremy Hunt reacts to that.